Hey everyone, welcome back to Book to Read. We are back with episode 38, and I'm so excited for this one. We're diving into this world of secret societies and ancient symbols and suspense, and it's going to be a wild ride. Are you ready to unlock some serious knowledge?
Let's crack this code.
All right, so we're taking those excerpts you sent us from Dan Brown's Angels and Demons and turning them into your own personal deep dive. Now remember, we're working with excerpts here. So we're focusing on the juiciest bits. It's like a highlight reel of all the mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, what we're dealing with is this Harvard symbologist, Robert Langdon, gets swept up in this conspiracy that spans centuries with the fate of the Vatican hanging in the balance.
And the clock is ticking. One of the most fascinating aspects of Angels and Demons is how Brown blends real historical events and scientific concepts, blurring the line between fact and fiction. It makes you wonder, what if?
Right. I mean, come on. The Illuminati, antimatter, secret passages beneath the Vatican, it's like something out of a movie, but with a dose of reality that makes it even more gripping. Speaking of gripping reads, have you heard about Bookspace?
It's a game changer for bookworms like us. Imagine a place where you can connect with other passionate readers, share those quotes that make your brain explode, and finally conquer that towering TBR pile.
It's like having a personal book club, but way cooler. You can organize your library, track your reading progress, and even discover new books based on what your friends are loving. Okay, back to the mystery at hand. One thing that jumps out from the excerpts is this amazing cast of characters: physicists, priests, the head of CERN. It's like a who's who of science and religion, all thrown together in this high-stakes situation. What's your take on that?
It's the clash of worldviews that makes it so compelling. You have Vittoria Vetra, this brilliant physicist working with antimatter, representing the cutting edge of science. And then you have the Camerlengo, deeply rooted in faith and tradition, forced to confront a threat unlike anything the church has ever seen.
And you've got the killer quoting Galileo, a science-obsessed villain using religious imagery. That irony is not lost on me. It's like he's mocking the very institutions he's trying to destroy.
That's what makes Angels and Demons such a thought-provoking read. Brown doesn't shy away from exploring the complex relationship between science and religion. He forces you to consider the potential consequences of scientific progress and the ethical dilemmas that arise when faith and reason collide.
Which brings us to the antimatter, and not the metaphorical kind. This stuff is real, and Brown captures its terrifying potential. The excerpts mention Vittoria and her father creating antimatter at CERN, which adds this ticking time bomb element to the story. It's like they've unleashed a force that could rewrite the rules of creation itself.
Antimatter is a mind-blowing concept. It's the mirror image of matter, and when they meet, they annihilate each other, releasing an incredible amount of energy. In the book, Brown uses antimatter not only as a plot device, but also as a symbol of the duality of science, its potential for both creation and destruction.
It's a potent reminder that scientific advancements, no matter how groundbreaking, come with risks and responsibilities. So we've got these opposing forces represented by the characters and this volatile element, the heart of the conflict. And then there's the path of illumination, this secret trail of clues hidden in art and architecture throughout Rome. How cool is that?
It's like a treasure hunt through history, where each stop on the path is laden with symbolism. Churches, fountains, even the Vatican necropolis itself, they all hold secrets that point toward the Illuminati's lair. It's as if Brown is inviting the reader to become a symbologist alongside Robert Langdon, deciphering clues and unraveling the mystery.
One line from the excerpts that really stuck with me is, "From Santi's earthly tomb with demon's hole." It's like a riddle wrapped in an enigma.
Ah, yes, that's a clue pointing to the Pantheon. Santi is another name for Raphael, the famous Renaissance artist, and his tomb is located in the Pantheon. The demon's hole refers to the oculus, the circular opening at the top of the Pantheon's dome. It's a brilliant example of how Brown weaves real historical and architectural details into his story, adding layers of meaning and intrigue.
And I bet there's a fascinating story behind why it's called the demon's hole, right?
Absolutely. There are ancient Roman legends connecting the Pantheon to the underworld. Brown uses that historical context to create a sense of mystery and danger, blurring the lines between myth and reality.
Okay, so we've got antimatter on the loose, a secret society with a vendetta and a chase through Rome that's basically one giant puzzle. Where do things go from there?
Well, the climax at Castel Sant'Angelo is where everything comes to a head. Langdon and Vittoria are racing against time to stop the antimatter canister from detonating, and they barely escape with their lives. It's a heart-stopping sequence that really highlights the ethical dilemmas at the heart of the story.
It's like a collision of science, religion, and human ambition, all playing out against the backdrop of this ancient city.
Exactly, and the choices that characters make in those moments of crisis reveal a lot about their values and beliefs. For example, remember the Mickey Mouse watch detail? It's a seemingly trivial thing that ends up saving Langdon's life.
That's what I love about Brown's writing. Even the smallest details can have huge significance. It makes you pay attention to every word, every symbol. And then there's the ending. Oh man, the ending. I won't spoil it completely, but let's just say that Camerlengo's role is not what it seems. His motivations are deeply complex, and the twist is one that makes you rethink everything that came before.
The Camerlengo's story arc is a perfect example of how Angels and Demons goes beyond a simple thriller. It's a story that makes you grapple with big questions about faith, betrayal, and the struggle for redemption. It forces you to confront the idea that even those in positions of religious authority are susceptible to human fallibility.
It's a reminder that power, whether it's derived from science or religion, can be both a force for good and a tool for destruction. And that's a pretty powerful message, especially in today's world.
It really makes you think about the nature of belief and the responsibility that comes with power.
Absolutely. So let's dig deeper into this path of illumination. You mentioned it's like a treasure hunt, with each stop symbolizing something important. What can you tell us about these clues and the locations they lead to?
Well, the excerpts mention the Chigi Chapel, which is where Langdon and Vittoria find their first marker on the path. It's not the Pantheon as they initially thought.
So what's so special about this Chigi Chapel?
The chapel is dedicated to a patron of science and adorned with earth symbols, making it a fitting starting point for this journey through science and religion. They find a sculpture of the prophet Habakkuk, who predicted the earth's destruction. Kind of sets the tone for the chase, right?
Talk about ominous. You mentioned each stop on the path is tied to one of the classical elements. Earth is first, what comes next?
The next clue leads them to Bernini's sculpture of the West Ponente in St. Peter's Square. It represents the element of air. It's not just about the location of the sculpture, but what it symbolizes.
I can see that would make it tricky to decipher. So what do they find there?
They find a message carved into the stone. Let angels guide you on your lofty quest. Remember, we're dealing with a villain who despises the church, yet he's using angels as guides. It's a brilliant way for Brown to highlight the hypocrisy and manipulation at play.
I can't believe the villain is using the church's own imagery against it. It adds a whole new layer of complexity to the story. Okay, so we've got earth and air. What about fire?
Fire brings us to the Church of Santa Maria della Vittoria, home to Bernini's masterpiece, The Ecstasy of St. Teresa.
Wait, I remember reading about this in the excerpts. It's a pretty intense sculpture, right?
Intense is an understatement. It depicts St. Teresa in a state of religious ecstasy, but the way Bernini portrays it, it blurs the lines between the spiritual and the physical. And what's even more twisted is that it's a demon, not an angel, that guides them to this location.
Whoa, a demon. It seems like the villain is intentionally mocking the church every step of the way. So they find another murdered cardinal at the Church of Santa Maria della Vittoria, but what about the clue to the next location?
That's where things get really interesting. Langdon realizes that the clue is hidden not in the sculpture itself, but in its placement within the church. The direction of the angel's spear points them south, toward the Tiber River. It's almost like Rome itself is part of this elaborate puzzle.
That's incredible. So the path of illumination isn't just about art and symbols, it's also about the geography of Rome. It connects the story to the city in a really tangible way.
Exactly. And this clue leads them to the Fountain of Four Rivers, another one of Bernini's masterpieces, located in Piazza Navona. You've probably seen pictures of it, those massive sculptures representing the four major rivers of the world: the Nile, the Ganges, the Danube, and the Rio de la Plata.
Oh, I definitely know that fountain. I can picture it perfectly. So that's the fourth altar of science, representing the element of water, earth, air, fire, water. They hit all the elements. What happens next? Where's this Church of Illumination, the Illuminati lair?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The excerpts give us a few tantalizing hints. The clue from the Fountain of Four Rivers points them towards a dove. It's a symbol of peace, but it's also been adopted as a symbol by the Illuminati.
Okay, a dove. But where in Rome would a dove lead them?
Well, Langdon remembers a legend about the founding of the church. A dove supposedly landed on the spot where St. Peter was crucified, and that's where they built St. Peter's Basilica.
Ah, so that's the connection. St. Peter's Basilica, but isn't that...
Where the Vatican is? Yes. And this is where the story takes a sharp turn. Remember that Camerlengo we talked about earlier? The Pope's right-hand man?
The one who seems so devoted to the church.
Exactly. It turns out that the Camerlengo is the mastermind behind everything.
Hold on, what? But why? He seems so holy.
And that's the genius of Brown's writing. He creates this character who is deeply conflicted, struggling with his own crisis of faith. The Camerlengo feels that the church is straying too far from its spiritual core, becoming too focused on science and reason. He wants to remind the world of the power of faith, even if it means resorting to extreme measures.
So he's gone rogue, orchestrating these attacks to make the church look like a victim, hoping to rally people back to faith.
Exactly. It's a twisted kind of logic, but it makes sense in the context of his character. He's convinced that he's doing God's work, even though his actions are morally reprehensible.
This is blowing my mind. What about the antimatter? What does he plan to do with it?
He hides the antimatter in the Vatican necropolis, the ancient burial ground beneath St. Peter's Basilica. And he sets a timer for it to detonate, hoping to create a spectacle that will shock the world and bring people back to God.
He's going to blow up the Vatican. Is he insane?
He's blinded by fanaticism, convinced that the ends justify the means. He truly believes that this is the only way to save the church.
Wow, this is heavy stuff. So we've got the Camerlengo as the villain, but what about Langdon and Vittoria? What happens to them?
They're still trying to stop the antimatter from detonating. They figure out the Camerlengo's plan and are now in a desperate race against time to find the canister before it's too late.
And this is all happening during the conclave to elect a new pope. Talk about pressure. What happens next?
Well, let's just say things get even more complicated.
Okay, so the Camerlengo's gone full-on zealot. The Vatican's about to become ground zero. And Langdon and Vittoria are in a race against time with, like, the fate of the world hanging in the balance. Talk about a page-turner. What happens next?
It's a real nail-biter, right? Remember, everyone still thinks it's the Illuminati behind these attacks. The media is having a field day. The public is freaking out. It's chaos.
The church's reputation is on the line, and this whole antimatter thing is a ticking time bomb in every sense of the word.
Exactly. And the Camerlengo realizes he can't stay hidden forever. He needs to reveal himself, but on his own terms. He's got to control the narrative.
Okay, so what does he do? He can't just stroll out and say, "Hey, surprise, it was me all along," while holding an antimatter bomb.
Well, he comes up with a plan that's both ingenious and completely bonkers. He's going to stage a miracle. He takes the antimatter canister and flies up in a Vatican helicopter with the intention of dropping it over the city.
Wait, what? He's going to jump out of a helicopter with a bomb that could wipe out a city?
He's completely convinced God will protect him. This is where his fanaticism takes a really dark turn. He's lost touch with reality.
So he thinks he's going to pull off some kind of divine stunt and emerge as this heroic savior.
Exactly. He's going to miraculously survive the antimatter explosion, proving to the world that God is on his side. It's a seriously messed up plan.
So does he actually jump?
He does, but not before Langdon catches up to him. They have this intense confrontation in the helicopter high above the city with the clock ticking down. Langdon tries to reason with him to make him see that he's become the very thing he's supposedly fighting against.
Wow, what a showdown. That's like good versus evil playing out thousands of feet in the air.
It's incredible, right? And with just seconds to spare, Langdon manages to convince the Camerlengo to let go of the antimatter canister.
Thank goodness. But what about the Camerlengo? He's in a helicopter with no parachute.
He jumps. It seems like he's embracing death as a martyr, sacrificing himself to save the city and redeem himself in the eyes of God.
That's intense. What a twist.
And meanwhile, Langdon's stuck in this helicopter with no pilot trying to figure out how to land the thing before the antimatter detonates.
Talk about a high-pressure situation. So what happens to the antimatter?
It explodes high above Rome, creating this massive silent ball of light that illuminates the entire night sky. It's described as this awe-inspiring, almost spiritual event. It's like a cosmic reset button.
I can only imagine how breathtaking that would be.
It's one of those moments where science and spectacle collide in a way that's both terrifying and beautiful. And in the aftermath, the Camerlengo is presumed dead, a martyr who saved the Vatican from a devastating attack.
So the Vatican is safe. The Camerlengo's gone, case closed, right?
Not so fast. Remember, the world still believes the Illuminati are responsible. Langdon, having witnessed the Camerlengo's descent into madness, knows the truth is far more complicated. He knows he needs to set the record straight.
But how can he prove it? The mastermind is dead, right?
Well, not exactly. Here comes another twist. They never find the Camerlengo's body. And while the church is scrambling to elect a new pope, the Camerlengo makes a shocking reappearance.
Hold on, he's alive. But he jumped out of a helicopter.
It seems he survived the fall. He shows up on the roof of St. Peter's Basilica looking like he just walked out of a Renaissance painting. The crowd goes wild. They see it as a miracle, a sign from God.
Wow, so the guy who orchestrated this whole crazy scheme is now being hailed as a divine messenger.
It's a classic case of perception versus reality, and as the conclave gathers to elect a new pope, guess who seems like the obvious choice?
The Camerlengo, the miracle man. Unbelievable.
He's about to become the head of the Catholic Church, all thanks to this elaborate hoax he engineered. But Langdon knows he can't let that happen. He has to expose the truth.
So what does he do?
He confronts the Camerlengo with evidence of his deception. He reveals the truth about the kidnapped cardinals, the staged attacks, the whole twisted plan.
I bet that got everyone's attention.
Yeah.
So what happens to the Camerlengo? Does he confess?
He disappears into the night, vanishes without a trace. His ultimate fate is left up in the air, another mystery for us to ponder.
What an ending. It's like Brown is saying, I've given you all the pieces, now you decide what it all means.
Exactly. And that's what makes Angels and Demons such a compelling read. It's not just about solving a mystery, it's about exploring the complexities of faith, reason, and the human condition.
It's a story that stays with you long after you finish the last page. It makes you think about the power of belief and how easily it can be twisted about the responsibility that comes with knowledge and the choices we make when faced with impossible situations.
It's a reminder that even in a world of science and technology, the human heart remains a mystery.
Well said. This deep dive has been quite a ride. I feel like I've traveled through the heart of Rome, wrestled with some big questions, and maybe even learned a thing or two about myself.
It's been a pleasure exploring this book with you. And it makes you think, doesn't it? If you were in Langdon's shoes, would you have exposed the Camerlengo, even if it meant potentially shaking the foundations of the church? Or would you have stayed silent, letting him become pope and hoping for the best?
That's a tough one. It's the kind of moral dilemma that makes you question your own values. And it's what makes Angels and Demons such a thought-provoking and timeless story.
It's a reminder that there are no easy answers when it comes to faith, reason, and the search for truth.
And that's why we love to read, isn't it? It challenges us, expands our perspectives, and leaves us with more questions than answers.
Exactly. And sometimes the journey is more important than the destination.
Well said. We've reached the end of our deep dive into Angels and Demons. But the conversation doesn't have to end here.
Head over to Bookspace or share your thoughts using #BookTourADeepDive. We'd love to hear what you think.
And until next time, happy reading.